Yeah, but if the Europeans want to be relevant, they can just say, oh, this is unfair, we want to be a part of the negotiation. They have to be honest with themselves. Why were they cut out? And there's two main reasons is that the Europeans, they're unrealistic and they're unreliable. They're unrealistic because they still talk about expanding Ukraine to NATO. They still talk about getting all the territories back. They're talking about security guarantees, which means tens of thousands of NATO troops being stationed in Ukraine. I mean, all this is nonsense. We lost the war. NATO fought a proxy war against Russia and lost. Every day that passes, Ukraine and NATO is put in an even more disadvantageous position. When you lose a war, it is the winning side that gets to dictate the terms. And Russia is dictating the terms. And it looks like the Europeans are willing just to say how unfair this is and it's unacceptable. It's not an option between either getting what the Russian wants or what the Europeans want. What the Europeans want, you can't get. NATO spent all its weapons. Ukraine spent all its manpower. It's either this very terrible deal, which is a humiliating deal also for Ukraine, or it's going to be an even worse deal after the Ukrainian army begins to collapse. So it's a terrible situation, but the Europeans have to realize again why they got cut. So again, not just that they're unrealistic, but also unreliable. They didn't. The Minsk agreement, if you remember, from 2015 to 2022, the Germans and the French negotiated this. They already admitted that they never intended for it to be implemented. They just wanted to have time to arm Ukraine. And even now, when the majority of Ukrainians are willing to give up territory in order to get a peace, they still refuse to talk to Russia. They say, why are we part of negotiations? Well, no one picked up the phone. No one called Russia, not just now. For 3 years, the Europeans, as well as the Americans, stood on the sideline. They watched hundreds of thousands of young men being slaughtered, and they didn't do anything. They refused to even sit down and do basic diplomacy with the Russians, see if there was any ways to mitigate some of this and reduce some of the killing. Nothing at all. I think they disgraced themselves. It's been disgusting what has been done, and now suddenly they demand that they should have a seat, even though they're still saying we don't really want any of the things to have a peace on any of these conditions.